Hey there, welcome. This is Christian here, and today's video is a little bit different. You see, I'm here in the United States, and I've literally just come out of a week-long Ayurvedically themed healing retreat. I say themed because it was combined with some more Western modalities, and in combination, there was a profound impact in my world, not just on a physical health level, but it gave me some profound insights to my healing process, and more importantly, why I haven't been able to make the results that I've been wanting around my personal healing and health and vitality that I've wanted. And I've been longing to share this with you because there's literal medicine that I have got from this last week that I think is going to change a lot for me, and I hope for you too. So this is going to be part blog, but also part transmission of some of my learnings, some of what I got. It won't be the whole thing. One, that will be too long. Perhaps I'll do that in a podcast if somebody wants to interview me about it. I'm probably best in an interview format. But I did want to just share a few of the highlights of like what came alive for me and where I am now a week later after doing this retreat. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Richard Haynes and my dear friend Summer for putting together this wonderful week for me in their clinic in Baker City, Oregon. So a big shout out to anybody who's interested in maybe participating and going deeper into this. Go check them out. It's the Lilly Center, Lilley Center in Baker City. So as many of you know, for the last 10 years or more, I've been struggling with a collection of symptoms that experts in the mold illness industry call CFS, chronic inflammatory syndrome. This basically is an umbrella term to describe symptoms like joint pain, non-restorative sleep, poor exercise recovery and tolerance, inability to do anything anaerobic, so lifting weights, anything intense, a lot of pain just in terms of heat and inflammation in the body, brain fog, poor concentration. And so these are just a few. And sometimes these symptoms express, and they're often called chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, ME. Autoimmune disorders can also fall into this category. And it's been really difficult because as somebody with quite a type A personality that has been very driven and ambitious and wanting to get my work out into the world and be a success and make an impact, these last 11 to 12 years with this in front of me, I've often seen it as this thing to try and get rid of so that I can go back to doing what I do best. And I think the biggest impact from this last week is realizing that this very expression of my body is an indicator of imbalance around how I'm meeting life in a day-to-day, moment-by-moment level. Most importantly, around how the nervous system is either activated or relaxed in any given moment. And for the last 10 years, I have sought out the best diet, the best technology, the best doctors, the best supplements, the treatments that could bring more oxygen into my body. The thing that's going to make it all go away and make it better. Almost as if like when I'm told, you know what, I think there's a lot to do here just on the stress, the adaptive nature of how you're adapting to stress, your nervous system being unregulated, your emotional state. I kind of wanted to ignore all of that. And it's ridiculous, I know, as somebody who teaches heart intelligence, who leads Circle and brings people into healing, where the focus is on feeling more and untapping and unraveling and opening up all these areas that need to be looked at and seeing how that can impact the physical body. You would think that I'd be the first to go only to, okay, what is happening to my relationship to the present moment and how am I meeting life? And yet I think there was just a part of me that didn't want to go there, didn't want to look at some areas that could potentially change or confront the persona that I've built around being a success and being intense and fast and making a big impact. I think there was some elements that were highly confrontational to the very construction of my personality, and thus was kind of like hitting on potential shadows, and thus focusing on when will the quick fix or the right technique or the right supplement or the right technology kind of like fix me. So my healing journey has very much been from doctor to doctor, from diet to diet, from supplement to supplement, technology to technology. And I think one of the most profound things that I got from last week was this deep appreciation for what my body is actually communicating back to me. The medicine that this entire disease, which is basically an imbalance, is reflecting back, is simply saying, you are too much in sympathetic dominance. Now, what that means to those of us who may not be nervous system trained is that there are two basic states that our nervous system is in. And I kind of knew all of this theoretically, because as a chiropractor studying all of this, this was, physiology 101. There are basically two states. We're either in this active fight or flight or freeze or fawn, this type of energy which is adapting to threat. It's a survival-based system. Or we're basically relaxed, open, resting, capable of restoring and digesting, right? Now, I always saw that as quite extreme states where, unless I'm being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or a lion or something is deeply threatening, I'm good. And one of the most amazing things that I got from last week's experience was this realization. I got to feel in my body by slowing down everything, from the way I was walking to the way I was eating to the way I was breathing, the way I was talking, to feel, oh, I'm in sympathetic, that's in that activated, charged, adrenalized state as the default. That's just on almost permanently. And then I have moments of experiencing exquisite, dropped in, parasympathetic response where I can fully feel my body coming to ease. Now, I experienced the reality that so many things activate our my sympathetic nervous system that I didn't realize. I want to share with you a few, because when you get this, like me, I started to understand, like, oh my God, this is why I'm not healing. Because I was always told, your body heals itself. Just give yourself rest and allow yourself time, and the body heals itself. And I got super frustrated and super angry at that statement. Why? Because in 10 years, I've just got worse. I felt more, less flexibility, less strength, less functionality, less energy. It hasn't got better, it's got worse over the years. So that very idea of, oh, the body heals itself. Yeah, I get it. If I cut myself, it's going to heal with it's going to, my body's going to do its thing and it's going to work. But when it comes to this part of my health, I've been very skeptical, cynical. And because my experience has been, it just gets worse. Things contract, not expand. And the insight basically is this. When in sympathetic dominance, when in an adrenalized state, when the nervous system is activated, it cannot heal. It's using its resources to survive, and therefore it's not using its resources to thrive. Thus, while in sympathetic dominance, the body does not have chance to go into a state where it can replenish and recharge. because this answered a big question for me. It's like, if I'm a battery, I understand my batteries run out. I'm a bit out of fuel. So let's recharge. But then why don't I recharge? Even when I do rest, even when I do sleep, even when I do eat the right things, right? It's one thing to see myself depleted when I'm not doing all the right things, but when I'm doing the right things and I'm not getting better, that's where the question starts. And so a different question arose. It wasn't, why aren't I healing? It's, why aren't I not dropping out of sympathetic dominance? Why aren't I allowing myself, or what's happening at a subconscious, or what's happening in my body that's continuously set in this default pattern of activation? But it's not the activation that is like super stress, like sweat, fear, I need to run, always anxious. No. It's so subtle. And this was the other piece, was that the sympathetic dominance first was only measured with the heart rate variability, chest strap, and for me doing different exercises and realizing, oh wow, I have to be really tuned in and I have to track, and I can subtly now feel when I go from parasympathetic to sympathetic. And it's not because of some threat or some outward stress that's obvious. It's usually really, really, really subtle. And when I began to understand this, I went, oh my God, my body, I had compassion for my body. I was like, of course it can't heal. It's been in this set state for decades, not just the last decade. The mold illness, the mold exposure was simply the last in a series of extra events that basically made this very obvious. If I were to dare call it, it was the gift that made clear that something needed to shift, that there was a bigger relationship to life that I needed to change. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit. So I want to give you an example of some of the things that have led to this sympathetic dominant state, and why it's so difficult to come out of that, and why it's such an important practice to, well, for me to now make it my life's work, my life's practice, to kind of come into this more parasympathetic state more. So growing up, I did not feel safe. I developed a very hyper-vigilant psychology and energetic. I was living mostly out of my body and in the field to scan for threat. I grew up in an environment where my father would sometimes just explode and have rage explosions. And I didn't quite know when they would come. And as the child that was a little bit more naughty and had temper tantrums and wasn't always following the rules, I would get the brunt of that. And often, as it was in those days, quite normal, I got hit, I got spanked. It wasn't all the time, but it was enough for me to begin to feel this sense of, I need to know where dad is. Where's daddy? Where's daddy? So I would start to become hyper vigilant, to feel the field and to begin to notice where he was, so I could protect myself. Now this is an adaptive and healthy construction based on the environment, the epigenetic state and space that I was in. But over the years, that becomes a habit, that becomes a norm, that becomes a set point for the nervous system to be kind of like in that state. So that was one area that I realized from my childhood that creates activation. The second was I had a lot of asthma. That was probably connected to my emotional, inability to express my emotions, my grief. My father had asthma. It was a way to connect with him. So it was partly genetic and passed on too. So there was a whole mixture around. My breathing was difficult. And I used to use those Ventolin, these blue inhalers and the brown inhalers. And for those who've had asthma, the brown ones are the steroid that technically you should be taking over and over and over again consistently to keep the inflammation down. And you only use the blue one which is a beta blocker that prevents, that actually activates the sympathetic nervous system, so it opens up the airways more as an emergency use. But for some reason as a child, I was so undisciplined and inconsistent. I never took my steroid or brown inhaler, and I kept on taking the blue one. And I used to have panic attacks over and over again. In fact, I would be going out with my friends at night and I would be so stressed, especially after a few incidents when I was a teenager and I got attacked outside of a nightclub, and again a few weeks later, and I was in these fights, and now I was on a high alert. So not only did I have this experience of my childhood, but then it was confirmed and overlaid with these experiences in adolescence as a teenager. And then on top of that, I was taking this inhaler in overdose. I'd go through like half a canister a night. I would take it like 10, 12 times in a go. So my whole sympathetic system went into overload. So these were just a few areas that were just deeply impacting and creating a nervous system that did not know how to come back from that sympathetic dominant state into rest, restore, relax. So it started really, really young. The other one is around the persona. So for those of you who may not follow this the psychology of persona and shadows, basically when we are born, from the moment we're born, we're very vulnerable and dependent, and we have needs. And we have a need to breathe, we have a need to be fed, we have a need to be sheltered and held and taken care of. We are super dependent. So pretty much instantly, and especially in these first 8 years of life, a child is continuously and strategically figuring out what establishes and maintains connection. Because when there's connection, there's life. Literally, if I'm connected and there's love, there's life. There's needs being met. So we start to develop behaviors that basically form and allow us to be connected. So this is the category of what is allowed. But simultaneously to us building and developing the behaviors around what is allowed, we are also realizing there are certain behaviors and aspects and ways of being that are not allowed. That in fact, when we do that, we actually are disconnected. We get punished, we get shamed, we get rejected, we get abandoned. And so as we are born into the world and as we grow up developmentally through these first 8 years of life, we develop a persona of the areas of what we can do to get love, and avoiding the things that we shouldn't do, because if we do that, we will have the opposite. We'll be rejected and we won't have love. So the persona and the shadow develop simultaneously. The shadow is what's not allowed, and the persona is what we do that is allowed. So why am I saying all of this? A big part of what I have developed over the years is this ability to shapeshift and adapt my behavior to another's perceived sense of approval. So for example, I enter into a room and I can feel what other people are feeling because of this hypervigilant capacity to be living in the field and knowing where people are in order to feel safe. And I can start to sense, am I appropriate? Am I well behaved? Am I doing what's necessary in order to feel there's connection? And if I'm being too much, too little, not enough that, I can adjust the ingredients and I can turn on certain parts and turn down the volume in other parts, so that the way I'm being presented comes across as what the other person wants, and therefore I can feel connected, and there is an established sense of approval and love, and okay, the system can relax in that moment. But what therefore I'm having to experience inside is not trusting that I can just be me in the presence of you. What I have to do is manage, supervise, adjust, adapt, kind of conform, stifle my truth. So suddenly my whole way of being gets contorted in order to stay in connection. And this is taking a lot of energy. This is activating that sympathetic nervous system that I was talking about. That, in other words, if I were to put it bluntly, connection and relating isn't relaxing for me, because I'm consistently confronted with, okay, now I'm in relationship with this person, now I'm making eye contact with them, now I'm in this state of intimacy. What do I need to do to maintain connection? And therefore, this is why it's been such a powerful practice to develop heart IQ, heart intelligence, and circle work, and the intimacy work and the relationship work, because we teach what we need to learn the most. And it's also, you know, the manual back home. And yet it's also the very practice that, if I'm not careful and I'm not conscious and I'm not aware, can be the activator of more sympathetic activation. Therefore, what I'm saying is that often my time in circle, my time teaching, my time in connection, my time relating, whether it's in a professional capacity or in a personal capacity, it drains. And I've developed over this last month this new term that I call connection fatigue. I feel like I just can't. I go into a space where I am teaching, or I'm in a retreat and I need to suddenly make eye contact with somebody and do a process, and I just feel I can't. I cannot do more eye gazing. I can't feel more of what's happening inside of me. I can't track right now. It's like, it's a connection fatigue, because it's reaching a boundary of like, I can't take the energy to do it right anymore. And that idea of doing it right was the thing that last week I got to look at and go, oh my God, I spend so much energy in an activated state trying to maintain connection. Is it possible for me to be in connection and be truly myself, risking that in being myself, losing connection, being abandoned, being rejected, etc., etc.? And realizing just how much of my life is out of balance, out of, like, I'm so available to customers, to participants, to staff, team, people, friends, people I love, partners, all of it. It's like there's so much availability and so little time where I boundary my energy to, like, I need to just move, be here for me, not be available to the world. So there's so much tied into my addictions, the part that is kind of like a workaholic that wants to put out this body of work that I know has impact, but every time I open the screen is an activator, especially screens at night or very early in the morning. The way that I talk, the way that I breathe, am I breathing through my nose rather than through my mouth? When I'm eating, am I watching something? Am I present? What am I, it's not about what I eat so much. It's like when I'm eating and how I'm eating it, for example. So the entire week, if I could kind of like summarize it in a nutshell, is around having a new relationship with the moment by becoming consistently aware moment by moment of whether I'm in sympathetic dominance or parasympathetic dominance. And my practice is to become more and more able to access these parasympathetic moments. And as those moments expand and expand, I'm in trust that my body can then heal and rebalance and reconnect. And it's going to mean setting up boundaries and creating a different type of lifestyle, and business versus outside of business balance. And that feels confronting because I don't know what impact that's going to have. Yet I feel it's necessary and it's time. I feel that the very type A personality of drive that pushes. I don't want to make that wrong, yet it's also out of balance the cause of my sympathetic dominance that is creating a state of adrenalized fatigue where my body simply can't recharge and recover and rest. And I'm curious as I'm sharing this, how many of you listening to this in one form or another, whether you've had mold illness or something else, can relate and say, well, just like me. And I feel like this is something I want to infuse into my circle work, into Heart IQ. Not because I want to teach you all, but because I need to do this as part of me being a teacher and being a messenger and being a facilitator. I want my time in circle to be a demonstration of how to live life in a way that is healthy, harmonious, and in balance. So therefore slowing down, bringing in more regulation, bringing in more parasympathetic time to be conscious around how we eat, the amount of stuff we do in a given day, for example. So I feel super lit up, super inspired, and very, very grateful. And this feels like an opening. What's coming next? In a few weeks' time, I'm going to be going to the south of France, and I'm going to be doing an ayahuasca trip. Very first ayahuasca. It's a 1-to-1 retreat. So myself and a brother are going to do it with a guided shaman, medicine woman, for the whole week. It's just going to be the three of us. And the reason I'm not doing it in a group is because my nervous system is so open to group. I don't want to feel everybody else. For the very reasons that I've just shared, I want to come back home and have this experience for me. And it's a little bit scary, the whole idea of ayahuasca. It's not something that just goes, oh, I'm good. Let's just, I'm casual about it. I can feel like this is an edge for me. And yet I'm looking forward to it. I feel like something from that medicine journey is going to deepen what I've just expressed here today. And it's going to just take that further. So I'm super excited. This month of September has been, a month of healing and health and awareness around that. And I hope that this share has inspired you. If it has, I'd love to hear in the comments. I'd love to start a dialogue and hear from you around how are you becoming more aware of your activated nervous system, and how does that show up in the world, maybe in the form of imbalances or health that is looking to be healed. So with that, take good care, and I will speak to you very, very soon.